Hello, Swifto here. I'm going to do another little test reading from my children's story, The Otteryssey. The first test reading I did, I read like the first few chapters except chapter 1, and I feel like maybe that was a mistake because they're not exactly the most action-packed, exciting things, and thought maybe it might have been better if I'd read a couple of the more exciting chapters perhaps. So that's what I'm going to do today. I'm going to read chapter 5 and 6, where stuff actually happens, and it might give you a better taster of what the story's all about, and maybe you think it's worthy of continuing, or if it should just be something to be scrapped like all my other projects. Anyway, I shall start now. Chapter 5. The Corrie Wrekin. Little Orkney swam tirelessly onward. To where? He did not know. It was only now, after swimming for some time, that he realised what an idiot he had been to swim away so quickly, without even waiting till after breakfast. He was rapidly becoming hungry and tired, and didn't know how much longer he could continue on. But now he was in the open ocean, and could not find a good place to stop and rest. Around him he could see land, but it was bordered by fierce-looking cliffs, which waves splashed against and made the waters rough and very dangerous. Sharp rocks lay under the whooshing currents of the waves, and even if he did dare to venture over to the cliffs, there was simply no place to land safely, and not be pushed into the rocks by the force of the waves. Since leaving the little slate island in the morning, he had passed many other islands, which would have been good spots to stop and have a rest. But he had been so eager then to get home, that rest was far from his mind. Now he was annoyed with himself for getting so far and so tired out, with no safe place to rest. He continued on through the deep ocean, far from the cliffs, where it was moderately more safe. Though this far out, he was in danger of drowning. He struggled on, feeling exhaustion take over his weak little body. The only thing that kept him going was the desperate desire to get home to his mother. He was desperate to find out if his sister had escaped or not. It was only this that kept him from giving up and drowning. He couldn't stop until he was home, safe in his mother's paws, with his sister beside him, sharing a tasty fish dinner together. He was hopelessly lost and rapidly swimming into an even greater danger. Had he known just what he was heading for, he may have just given up there and then and allowed himself to drown, rather than face what was about to cross his path. He was swimming straight into the Corrie Wrekin whirlpool, which lies just north of the island of Jura, in between a strait of water south of the island of Scarborough. Under those waters lies a tall underwater mountain beside a deep hole, which together causes the water currents to create a giant whirlpool that is very dangerous for any animal, big or small, to get trapped in. Orkney was so focused on swimming and too tired to pay attention that it was all too late when he discovered that the water he was swimming into was moving around him at rapid speeds towards the centre of the whirlpool. He was suddenly alerted to this underwater force pushing him this way and that way. He tried to struggle against it, but as he struggled, he panicked and soon found himself being dragged under the water where he could not breathe. He desperately tried to force himself up to the surface, but it was like pushing against a very strong wind. The waves thrashed him about, and at one point he was thrown up out of the water where he could at last catch his breath. He tried to stay on the surface and navigate his way out of the strait, but had been carried along so far by the water's currents that he could not get his bearings, and seemed to be stuck in the middle of it all. But the little pup had a burning desire to stay alive, and so continued to force his way through the currents, hoping to reach the shoreline, which now didn't seem that far away. Then a huge wave that looked like a big human hand, only icy blue, crashed down over him and seemed to drag his little body down deep into the heart of the whirlpool. He watched in hopeless fear as the light of day on the rippling surface slowly faded and left him in darkness, deep under the angry sea. He felt the last little bit of breath slip from his mouth and felt his life was coming to an end. He closed his eyes and felt a strange feeling of peace come over him, as the terror of the water currents melted away and left him feeling contentedly restful. He thought he was dead, and would have remained there in peaceful rest if it wasn't for a new sensation that kept him alert and alive. He felt something cold, something smooth, push past his body, and at once he knew he lived still. In the mysterious darkness there was odd, terrifying sounds like thunder. Scary sounds of something cracking and moaning. Something alive. A deep, mournful sounding voice bellowed at him, and at first he did not realise that it was a voice. It shocked him so much that he felt the sound vibrate through his body, and he squirmed in fear of it. Then the voice spoke again, and this time he thought he understood it. "Hold on tight," it said. Hold on? Orkney thought to himself. Hold on to what? He reached his paws out into the darkness and felt a strange, slippery, floppy piece of something in front of him. He grabbed it and held on as tight as he could. He then felt the force of whatever it was push against the water currents, and slowly light came flooding into the water again. He felt like he was going to slip off the something at any moment, but he managed to get a good tight grip of whatever it was. As the light got brighter, he could see that the something he was holding onto was a kind of giant furless flipper, and was attached to a giant furless body. He had only ever heard about them before in stories that his mother had told him, but he guessed that he was riding on the back of an odd animal called a whale. The whale crashed up and out of the water, and its back lay exposed to the open air. A huge spray of water billowed out of its blowholes. The whale was a mammal like Orkney. It too also needed to go back to the water's surface to get a breath of air. Whales can hold their breath for a very long time. This allows them to dive down into the depths where they often find their food. A very long time ago, back when the earth was much younger, the whale's ancient ancestors were land animals that decided to spend more time in the water rather than the land. In time they slowly lost their fur, and their legs became fins to make it better at swimming. Eventually, after millions of years, the whales were so adapted to ocean life that they could not return to the land. Though it is possible that in another millennia, should the whales survive that long, that they might evolve once again into land animals. The whale that saved Orkney was a minke, an intelligent and inquisitive animal. They knew that Orkney was an air breather like themselves, and instinctively knew to take him back to the water's surface to allow him to breathe again. Orkney was exhausted from lack of air, feeling woozy from being battered about under the water. He lay on the whale's back in a drowsy state and looked over the water in amazement. All around him were fins of a large pod of whales, who had all gathered together to ride the currents of the Corryvreckan, which they did for fun. "Hello, little friend," bellowed the great beast that had saved Orkney. "What's a little thing like you doing here? Don't you know how dangerous it is?" "No, I didn't. I've never been here before." "Oh my, you silly little thing. You are very lucky that we happen to be swimming here today. Tell me, who are you, and why do you come here to this place, which surely would have killed you?" "I'm Orkney. I'm just trying to get back home." "We are pleased to meet you, Orkney. My name is Mull the Minke. This place is too dangerous for the likes of you. Tell us, where is your home, and we'll take you there." I don't know the way home. I don't even know where I am."
"Oh dear. Well, we'll take you someplace safe anyway. The shore of that big island over there should be safe, only we can't get too close to the shore in case we get stuck on the ground, be unable to swim away."
The whales slowly swam out the Corryvreckan with their passenger, and down the safer shore of the island of Jura. As they travelled, Orkney was treated to the weird and wonderful sound of the whale's song. Just as it was part of otter tradition to tell tall tales of sea monsters and brave otters who were skilled at catching the trickiest of fish, the whales had their own folk stories, which they told in song. The whales sang merrily of days long ago, when the seas were full of fish and the whales were bigger and stronger than the ones of today. They told of vast pods of a variety of different whales that would meet in friendship or sometimes in battle for the rights to fish. All the singing of fish reminded Orkney of his own hungry little belly. Almost as if they knew his thoughts, one of the whales dove down into the deep and shortly after splashed back up to the surface, flinging up into the air a rain of fresh fish. They almost hit Orkney on the head, but he dodged them, and the frightened, wriggling little creatures slipped down the back of Mull's tail. Orkney managed to grab hold of a couple just before they could slip away. He happily munched away on the fish the whales had given him, as they continued their songs of ancient epics. As they went on and on singing, the music slowly started to change into a deeper, more aggressive tone. They now sang of days when the humans began to attack. They sang tales of not so long ago and the memories of the more long-lived whales, when human beings waged a bloody war on all whale kind. They sang of great heroic whales that fought back and smashed the human boats. They felt sorry for harming such naive, aggressive little creatures that could not survive long in the cold water, but the whales had to do what they did in order to survive. They sung in a sombre voice as they listed some of their fallen heroes that lived long ago, but died not so long ago for some of the bigger, more long-lived whales. They were glad that those days had since passed, and most of the humans these days were much friendlier. At least in this part of the world. Sadly for other whales in far-off seas, the war between man and whale still rages on, for reasons the whales are clueless about. Even most humans these days are perplexed by the pointless slaughter of such intelligent and harmless creatures. Now their singing became softer again and took on a sadder tone. They told of times as they were now. The whales were fewer, they now sang. All the great heroes of their earlier days had been killed, and the whales that were left were small in number, more scattered through the sea, and the fishing was harder now. They sung a verse about future times, and how they hoped for the sake of the whole ocean that whales and humans could live peacefully again. The hopeful whale song livened up now, and they sang of happier days to come when they foresaw a time when humans and whale kind could live together as friends. They hoped that when the humans stopped attacking, the fish too would come out of hiding and populate the seas as plentiful as they were in ancient times. And there would be enough fish for both man and whale. Then the singing pod of whales quietened down and stopped a good distance away from the shoreline of Jura. There was a golden sandy beach there, and the whales judged it to be a good spot for Orkney to get off. Orkney had the same idea and called to Mull the monkey. "This looks like a good place for me to swim to, if that's okay with you guys." Mull bellowed with agreement and said, "Yes, tiny one, this is a nice safe spot for you to rest. We wish you all the best and sincerely hope that you will find your home one day." "Goodbye. Thanks for everything," Orkney called out as he dived into the water. "No worries, little Orkney. It was a pleasure to sing our songs to you. If we meet again, you are welcome to climb on my back and hear our tales of ancient times once again. Perhaps at that time we'll have a new song to sing about the brave little otter who dared to swim in angry waters." Orkney squeaked happily and swam away. He called out once more, "So long, and thanks for all the fish." Swimming into the little bay of the sandy beach, Orkney was able to hop weakly up onto the rocks by the shoreline and feel dry land again. He stood on his hind legs and watched the fins of the minke whales as they swam away back up to have their fun in the whirlpool. He waved to them as they slowly got further and further away into the distance. There was a little splash that he could just make out in the distance. He saw that it was Mull, who had just reached out of the water to wave a flipper goodbye to the little otter. Otters have good eyesight, but even better hearing. Even from this far away, he could hear the whales begin their songs again. He was happy to have been privileged enough to witness such an amazing sight and hear their tales of ancient days. He wondered what his mum and sister would think of it all, and he wished he could tell them all about it. Thinking of his lost family reminded him of the hard day he had had, and the tiredness of the day finally caught up with him again. He wobbled a little and had to go back down on all four legs again. He felt overwhelmingly exhausted, and his eyes felt too heavy to keep open. He collapsed and fell asleep right there in the open, on the exposed rock, next to the sea. Chapter 6. The Lord of Jura. As Orkney slept, curled up in a ball on the rock, he was unaware of the passing of evening into the darkness of night. The stars shone, and the moon made its way across the horizon, until it was early morning and the sky was turning a dark blue. The sun would be coming up soon, but Orkney was fast asleep, oblivious to everything around him. He was completely unaware of the great lumbering monster that slowly approached him from the land. It was a giant compared to little Orkney. It had thick, scruffy fur, unlike anything Orkney would have ever seen. Fierce dark eyes, big long legs, and huge spiky horns coming a metre or so out of its head called antlers. The beast was a big, old, and very proud stag. The stag seemed a little dazed. It staggered down on the beach and collapsed its front legs down onto the soft sand with a heavy thud. Fresh blood trickled down its head and made keeping its right eye open a little difficult. He had also been wounded on his back leg, though it was not too serious. He had a little trouble sitting down on the ground, but was otherwise all right, just a little weak and tired. The stag sat breathing heavily as he slowly recovered from his head wound, which had left him in such a dazed state. The noise of his breathing woke up Orkney, and he looked around in the early morning light confused. For a moment he had forgotten that he was not at home, and was confused about where he was. Slowly his memory came back to him, and then suddenly started to wonder what that strange sound was. He darted his head round to face the beach, and was frightened by the great, big thing making all the noise. He squeaked uncontrollably from fright, and leapt behind the rock. The stag also seemed to get quite a fright, as Orkney squeaked. He got up weakly and sniffed about the rocks. "What be'st this strange creature now, that come to mock me in my time of deepest desolation?" the stag bellowed. "Come from thy hiding place, foul mocker of fallen lords. Hast thou no shame, beast?" Orkney trembled and peeked out from around the rock. The great beast was looking down at him angrily. "Ah, 'tis nothing but a common pest. Is this now what my shameful self has been reduced to? Once proud lord of Jura, beaten, and now mocked by a petty little sea rat. Oh shame, my utter shame is complete." "Hey, I'm an otter, I'll have you know," said Orkney, feeling a little insulted by being called a sea rat. "An otter? What is a mere otter compared to the likes of fallen royalty such as myself? Know ye not who you address, sir? I'm a proud and mighty stag of fine breeding. I am the wise and powerful Lord of Jura himself, Lord Shet the 14th, the mightiest of all stags. Or at least I was once the mightiest of all stags. Alas, I have been stripped of all honour and pride." "Oh, I'm sorry to hear that," said Orkney innocently, not really having any clue what the stag was talking about. The great stag sighed with annoyance and turned away from Orkney. "'Tis clear that you are nothing but a simple creature, You know not what great loss I have suffered. Oh, why must I be mocked in such a way? Here be I, mighty Shet, reduced to talking to such a petty animal such as this."
"Why do you have to be so rude? All I said was I was sorry. Please tell me what happened so I might better understand you."
The stag grunted. Then, swallowing his pride, he reluctantly turned around and faced the little creature, which he begrudgingly obeyed. He nodded his head and took a deep breath. He mustered all his strength and stood up straight, standing proudly and thrusting his long, fearsome antlers into the air. He collected his thoughts and cleared his throat to begin his tale. Just then the first rays of the morning sun started to rise up in the sky, and the stag seemed to almost sparkle in its radiance. He now looked more like a god than a mere beast, as though he was Zeus himself in disguise. It was easy for even Orkney to see how he could be seen as a great and powerful leader. "Upon that hill yonder," Shet began, "I first fought for my rights to be Lord of Jura when I was just a young buck. I was the biggest, most fearsome stag of all my generation, and I fought battle after battle for my right to claim any of the young deer that I chose. In those days the fighting was good, and I was only too keen to show my prowess on the battleground. Aye, in my full glory of youth, I was a sight to behold. No one could stand in the way of my great bulk and strength. It wasn't all about strength, though. I had brains, too. With my cunning, I was unbeatable, unrivalled and glorious." Orkney was still very tired, and all this talk of the stag's massive ego made him drift off a little. The stag suddenly got louder, and Orkney jolted back again, awake. "Alas!" the stag cried out. "Alas, my glorious youth is far behind me now. As the years have went by, the fighting got tougher. Each mating season there would be fresh new bucks waiting to challenge me, armed with the energy and arrogance of youth. Every time it got a little bit harder, and I felt my strength slowly slip away. As the rain dust slipped from the backs of the young deer's rump, so it was that my strength began to dissipate through the seasons." All this standing proud and ego-boosting evidently exhausted the wounded old stag. He weakly sat back down in the sand and enjoyed the morning sun warm his cold fur. "This year was particularly hard going, as you can plainly see. I have failed, and now I must step down as Lord of Jura, and let this new young lord take my place. It is the way it's always been for us stags, and normally as an old stag I should be accepting of my fate, as it was inevitable. But this new lord is a foul and evil young buck. He has no respect for his elders, nor the deer which he rules over now. He is steeped in arrogance and lust of gain. Had it been one of the other bucks who had beaten me, perhaps I would have been content to fade away like the seeds of a dandelion, and let them take over. But this new lord is wicked, and does not treat his dear folk with respect. I fear that he will be the ruin of my kin. Oh, if only I was young again. If only I could fight as I once did all those years ago." Orkney seemed to brighten up as he listened to the old stag's tale. "Maybe once you've had a good rest and a nice tasty fish you'll feel strong again. I always feel a lot stronger after a hearty meal and a good sleep." "Oh, foolish little thing you are, can't you see that I'm just too old? I've been wounded also. Nay, I shall not fight again." "Why not? Didn't you say yourself it wasn't just about strength, but brains too? Sure, you may be weak, but perhaps you could use your brains to find a way to defeat this bad new lord." "Ha ha, silly little otter. You're trying at least, but alas, I fear that even the greatest of stratagems won't help me now. Nay, I'm done for, good sir. I am done for." Orkney looked around, trying to think of something that might be helpful, but drew a blank. They sat in silence for a while as the morning continued on. After a little while, Orkney went off to catch a fish for his breakfast. He came back to the beach and offered some of his fish to the old stag. Shet took one sniff of the fish and moved away from it in disgust.
"Foolish wretch, you eat those things? An old lord such as myself cannot be sustained on such disgusting savagery."
"Sorry, I was only trying to help," Orkney said sadly.
"Ah, be not sorry, young laddie. 'Tis was a mistake easy to make. Be not you mournful, for it is I who have shamefully disregarded one's manners."
The stag knelt down beside Orkney.
"Climb on my back, and we shall breakfast together as friends, off yonder hill where the grass is green and glorious."
Orkney held on to his fish with his mouth, and used his paws to climb up the stag's back. He sat and munched away on his fish, while looking around at the land the stag was slowly walking through. He had never been this far inland before, and it was an odd sensation to him to be so far from the sea, where the waves were quiet in the distance, and gentle birdsong filled the air. Shet began to graze on the grass that grew on the side of the hill, and Orkney, having finished his fish, leapt off the stag's back to go explore this strange new place. It was full of smells and sounds that were all new and wonderful to Orkney. He had fun hopping through the tall grass, sniffing the yellow dandelions that grew in it. They had been enjoying themselves for some time when Orkney heard the sound of hoofs in the distance. He ran in fear and climbed back onto Shet's back. Shet lifted his head up, and looking up to the top of the hill, he saw the silhouettes of deer standing there looking down at them. In the middle there was a larger figure, which Shet recognised to be that of the new lord, the young buck Canna, who had dethroned him.
"Shet!"
Canna called out, his voice echoing down the side of the hill.
"Lord of nothing! This is not your grass any more. You have no place left to stay on this island. Go then and find some squalid hole to pass away in." "Foolish Canna,"
Shet called back.
"Are you so petty and vulnerable a leader that you would not even grant such a weak old stag as myself to graze peacefully on this hill and pass away with respect? Are you so scared still that I may try and fight you once more?"
"Nay, old fool, as you are. I only wish that you do not stink up the place with your foul stench of death, and let us young enjoy our days without having to suffer looking at the wretched creature you have become."
"Alas, young lord, your reign shall be short indeed if thou continue this attitude of arrogance. Have you no shame, sir? No honour to give those who in younger days were far better stag than you are now.
Go, wretch, and do not suffer me any more of this foolish talk." Canna charged down the hill with great speed. Shet, fearing more for Orkney's sake rather than his own, ran as fast as he could back down to the shore. Satisfied that he had driven away the old lord, Canna stopped and watched him disappear down onto the beach. Orkney held on tight as Shet galloped with great speed down to the beach and slid to a stop, huffing and puffing.
"Now you see what a foolish, arrogant young buck that Canna is?"
Shet asked Orkney. "He reminds me of someone," Orkney thought to himself while saying aloud to Shet, "Yes, I can see what you mean now."
"Alas, he has the strength of youth, but lacks the honour and brains of a true lord."
Shet was hot from all his running, and walked into the sea to cool off. The water on this beach was full of seaweed, and Shet had to push his way through it all to move. He put his head under the water, and when he came back up again, it was covered in seaweed. For little Orkney sitting on his back, it was quite a terrifying sight to see his big antlers all covered in thick, dark seaweed, dripping with water. The curved shape of his antlers gave the impression of a big, wide, open mouth full of sharp little teeth. It made Orkney think of the old story his mum once told him about the ormelet. The ormelet was a huge sea monster that was covered in seaweed and had a big open mouth that would swallow up little otter pups. His mother had warned him of the ormelet to stop him from swimming too far from home. Looking at the back of Shet's head now, With his antlers covered in seaweed, it looked startlingly like how Orkney imagined the ormlet would look. He joked to himself that if he wasn't smart enough to know that it was only shit, he might have been frightened away by the sight of it. This gave Orkney an idea. A little later, Shet was shaking his great big antlers from side to side in disagreement with Orkney.
"Nay, it is a silly plan, this folly of yours, young pup. Not even the dumbest of deer kind could possibly be fooled by such a simple trick."
"But you haven't even tried it. How do you know it won't work if you don't try?"
"'Tis a foolish idea. Besides, even if it did work, you expect someone as brave and as honourable as I to hide behind such a disguise and use cheap trickery?"
What's so foolish or cheap about using trickery? We otter folk are known for our brave heroes who use simple tricks to fool silly fish into their mouths. It's not cheap. It's using your brain.
Bah! Such a slippery creature like you could never understand the pride that comes from an honourable fight.
Well, what's so great about bashing your head against your enemy's head, as you deer folk do? Just seems dumb to me.
"Enough, foolish sea slime,"
Shet snapped at him.
"You know not the glory of battle, and cannot speak of such things with such dishonour. I have spoken my mind, and I shall not be party to this silly little trick you propose."
"But you don't understand, you big lumbering bonehead. You're old, you can't fight the younger stag. He will ruin your island and deer folk and leave you to die dishonourably here on this beach. Your only options are to try my trick or die here without even trying at all. Now what seems to you like the more dishonourable option to you? To try or to simply give up?"
"Ah, blast it all,"
sighed Shet.
"Alas, I fear you may be right. I do not like to stoop to such low tricks, but as my old herd needs my help, I must do whatever I can to defeat deceitful Canna."
"Great," squeaked Orkney. "If you cover yourself in seaweed, you'll look just like the ormlet."
"What even be this so-called omelette you speak of?"
"It's a foul sea monster that has a great wide open mouth. It's covered in seaweed and eats up young otter pups. It's a terrifying thing." The stag burst out laughing.
"Aye, is that so, little pup? Sounds like some silly children's fable to me, laddie."
"It's true," Orkney squeaked with annoyance. "My mum told me all about it."
"Nay, silly pup, your mum's been telling you tall tales. There's no such creature as that in all the land or sea."
"But she saw it. Honest she has," insisted Orkney.
"Aye, perhaps she thought she saw it at least. Nay, I'm afraid that silly little story won't work on Canna. But fear not, for we deer folk have our own myths and legends. It just so happens that we too have a story of a sea monster. Has you by chance heard the story of old Will of the Waves?"
"No, I haven't."
"Well, 'tis was long ago. They say there was an old stag like myself that was defeated in battle. This was the most fearsome, most ancient stag, known as Will the Warlord. But after a long, hard life, he was finally bested in battle and banished to the waves. Then, one dark night, the deer folk heard his terrible howls coming from the deep, dark sea. The young bucks trembled as they heard his ghostly cries. They went down to the beach to see if he had truly come back from the dead. And there, standing on the waves, was a dark figure of a giant stag, with antlers twice the size of my own."
Orkney's eyes widened as he continued to listen to the old stag's tale.
"They say his eyes were glowing with a white, soulless hunger, and he floated slowly across the waves towards the beach. As he got closer, they saw he was dripping with water and covered in seaweed. When he arrived, the young bucks ran for their lives, only to be hunted down by the vengeful spirit of the evil will of the waves.
Orkney was shivering with fright and timidly asked, You don't think it was this beach, do you? Shet burst out in a deep bellowing laughter which calmed Orkney slightly.
Don't be silly, Orkney, foolish pup. 'Tis just a story, a myth, like your omelette fellow. Not a body really takes it seriously. Then again, that foolish Canna is so obviously afraid that someone will challenge him that I wager that even a fable like Will o' the Waves would be enough to scare him straight.
Shet didn't waste any more time talking. He walked into the sea to get good and soaked, but more importantly, covered in seaweed. Night was fast approaching, and there was a full moon in the sky as they made their way up the hill. Orkney struggled to keep a hold of Shet's back because of all the slippery seaweed. The deer folk were resting on the top of the hill for the night, and Shet looked out at the field of deer with a steely gaze. Then Shet let out a loud, ear-screeching roar, which frightened poor Orkney and alerted all the deer folk. Canna got up and looked over at the mysterious, dark figure in the distance. Shet's eyes glowed a brilliant white as the moonlight reflected off them. Canna gasped with terror and called out in fear. It be old Will o' the Waves himself! He's come to challenge my rule! All the deer staggered to their feet and started running wildly in different directions away from the shadowy figure. Aye, foolish young buck, Shet shouted in a gravelly voice. I've come for thee. Come face my vengeful spirit and prove yourself worthy to lead. Canna felt he was no match for the immortal spirit of the evil Will of the Waves, and decided to run as fast as he could away from the shadowy figure. Shet ran after him, and Orkney had to hold on for his life as the old stag ran with all his might through the moonlit field towards his victim. He caught up with him fairly quickly despite his previous injuries, due to being more focused than Canna, who was terrified out of his wits and stumbled down the hill in the dark. Shet rammed his great big antlers into Canna's backside and flipped him up off his hind legs. Canna fell flat on his face, but was still able to get up again. He continued running until he got to the beach and had to stop at the water's edge. He turned to face his enemy, but cowered down in the sand, awaiting his fate. No, please don't hurt me, mighty warlord Will. Please, you win. You can rule all the deer folk, and I shall leave this part of the island for good.
Is that so, laddie?
Shet asked softly. Canna at once recognised the voice and looked up. He now saw Shet standing over him, illuminated by the moonlight. He had lost most of his seaweed during the chase, and Canna could see now that he had been tricked. All around the beach were gathered the other deer folk who had come to see the strange encounter.
Do you hear that, ladies? Shet called back to them. Canna has surrendered to me, the mighty Lord Shet, wise and crafty leader of the deer folk of Jorah.
Orkney rolled his eyes at Shet's boasting. Canna got back up. All right, Shet, he said bitterly. You win, but only through cheap trickery and not by honest fighting. It is a hollow victory, and I shall return to battle with you once again next season.
Nay, Canna, calm your bitter hatred. I have not come here to dethrone you and take your place. You are right. I only won through a trick. I am old, and I have had my time as leader for a good many years. This wasn't about trying to regain my title as Lord of Jorah. This was simply to teach you some respect. A good leader must always have respect. You may keep your herd to yourself, but you must treat your subjects with respect, or you will always live in fear of ghosts. Canna looked angry at Shet before relaxing and bowing his head. I understand, old lord. I have been so filled with fear of losing my title that I have been paranoid and foolish with my power.
I have not given you the respect that an old lord should have, and have dishonoured you by banishing you to this lonely beach. Please, old lord, forgive me and help me to learn from you and all your cunning and wisdom, so that I may be a better leader."
"Aye, young buck, that I can agree to. I too have also learned a great deal this day and night. I have been somewhat foolish in myself by being too prideful to listen to the wisdom of the young. This little otter pup here, if it wasn't for him, I would have surely let death take me this morning after our last battle. But he showed me that you are never too big or too old to learn a new trick or two."
Orkney was blushing and tried to argue that he only gave him a few suggestions. As the sun rose the next morning, Orkney felt it was time to be going. He would dearly miss his new... dearly, I just got that. That wasn't even intentional. Anyway. He would dearly miss his new friends, but felt the urge to get home tug at his heart once again. On the beach he said his goodbyes to Shet and Canna, and wished them all the best in their new partnership. Canna bowed his head to the little otter, and Shet knelt down beside him.
"Thank you once again, little otter pup. I only wish I could help you on your quest to get back home, but alas, I do not know of this rock beside a lighthouse and a castle which you speak of. The only advice I can give you is to travel west from here to the island of Colonsay. There you will find an odd but friendly seal called Sander, who will surely help you on your journey. I know him, or her, quite well, and they seem to know many things which a normal seal would not. Go there and ask for Sander, and before you know it, you'll be home again."
"Thank you. I will search for this Sander you speak of." Shet got up and told Orkney to wait a moment before he left.
"I think this will be a great help to you on your journey,"
the old stag said, and he went behind a rock. He came back, and in his antlers was a great big log of sturdy, hard wood. It was round with a stumpy little branch coming out of the top of it. Shet knelt down again and gently lowered his head and lay the log on the sand next to Orkney.
"This is a log of fine wood. It will float on the water and give you a place to rest on your long journey across the sea. You can hold onto the branch and paddle with it towards your destination. If you can ride the sea currents, then you will have to do less paddling and can take it easy on the back of the log."
Orkney was overjoyed with Shet's gift and thanked him at least 7 times before Shet told him to stop wasting time and get going. Orkney pushed his log into the water and climbed onto its back. The log floated out of the bay towards the great open ocean. Orkney looked back and waved to the 2 stags watching him from the beach. They both nodded their heads in respect to Orkney before slowly walking up the hill together. Orkney felt the thrill of adventure fill him with energy, and he couldn't wait to get to his next destination whilst riding his new logboat over the waves. He decided to call his logboat the Iona, in memory of the friend he'd left behind on the island of Slate, who had first taught him how to fish. With his little back paws, he paddled slowly and rested his long body over the log while holding onto the little nub of a branch which stuck out the top of it. Far off in the horizon, he saw the long, grey, lumpy mass of land which Shet had directed him towards on his quest to get home. He paddled his logboat over towards it and on to his next adventure, over towards the island of Colonsay. So that was chapter 5 and 6 of my children's story, The Otteryssey. Let me know what you think if you have any thoughts. Is it rubbish? Has it got some potential? Let me know. Or not if you don't feel like it. It's entirely your choice because we live in a free world. At least parts of the world. Sometimes. Depending on the mood of the governments. Anyway, let's not get into all that stuff.
I'm going to stop rambling now because I'm just rambling incoherent nonsense, and goodbye.